Hey everyone, and welcome to the Reel and Replay channel. I'm doing a three-part series here where I'm covering three lures that I use year-round to catch bass, and I'm just breaking down what I use, breaking down how I have it set up, and hopefully it'll give some of you newer, inexperienced anglers a little bit of information to where you can take some basic concepts and techniques and go out there and catch some bass. And maybe if you're not sure where to start, you can check out these videos. If you've not watched the shaky head video, that was the very first one. After you get done watching this, go into the channel and look for the shaky head video where I break down the shaky head and that's set up. And that's a technique that you'll definitely want to use if you've not been using that up to this point. So the second lure is the lure that I use to cover the most water. It's the one that I probably throw more times than not. I'm trying to search for bass, see if I can't generate some strikes. It is a lure that I've probably caught, well, not probably, it's the lure that I've caught the most bass on, ranging in all different types of sizes. So it doesn't discriminate in terms of size. It's not just a big bass catcher. It catches pretty much any size, and it's the one that I use quite a bit because I'm moving and searching, and it's my go-to for that technique, is just covering as much water as I possibly can. And if you've seen any of my videos, you know I'm not using forward-facing sonar or more of the modern day technology, and I'm not against that. I don't think it's evil. I don't think it needs to be banned. I just prefer to fish without it, and I'm not saying that I won't ever use it in the future. I just know I stare at a screen for work quite a bit. I don't want to be doing that out on the water. So if you have the money to purchase that technology and you can use it, then by all means go for it, use it. I just prefer not to do that. So if you don't use that type of technology, these are techniques that I use to kind of offset using that and pinpointing where some bass are. And this technique is a technique for me that is just kind of an old school way, I think, of kind of fishing and searching for bass. And it's none other than a medium diving crankbait. And more specifically, the one that I have tied on year round is a Rapala DT8. In my opinion, in the region in which I fish, which is South Central Kentucky, Tennessee. So Kentucky, Tennessee, I have found bass live year round in 6 to 8 foot of water. And I'm not just saying that because I think it sounds good. I'm saying it because I've caught bass year round in the depth range that this particular lure touches. It's a Rapala DT8. It's supposed to dive down to about 8 feet of water, depending on how you have it set up, which we'll go over. It can probably touch a little bit further than that, but this depth zone for a Rapala DT8, the magic zone for me is 6 to 8 feet of water. And I don't care what the water temperature is. I'm going to be using this year round. The only thing that changes for me depending on the season is the color. Right now you can see I have this crystal crawl on there, kind of your brownish. You got a little chartreuse in there, orange belly. This time of year, it's January, it's winter, it's cold. We got some brutal days. I like to go more toward the crawdad patterns and the reds. Wintertime fishing is more of those type of colors for me. But to be honest with you, browns and crawdad colors, reds, I don't totally throw those away. Just when, even when we get out of winter and it's springtime or summertime, I mean, every now and then I'll throw one on just because I feel like they haven't seen that in a while. And that color pattern, I've caught bass on it in pretty much every season. But more times than not, the crawdad patterns, the reds, I'm gonna stick with those more so in the winter when the water temperature is starting to drop below 50 degrees and we're starting to get into the 40s, and then maybe even the lower 50s. I'll start throwing this type of pattern, and it just seems to irritate and generate some more strikes in the colder water. But year-round lure, second one, my search bait, the one that I'm throwing quite a bit, Rapala DT8, and I have that thing tied on year-round, and I have caught bass on that particular lure year-round. So colors, like I said, browns, reds, those those are good in the winter. In the springtime, summer, obviously I'm going to go a little bit more towards shad, and the shad patterns also in the winter are good because bass they feed on shad quite a bit. But I will go more toward like a citrus shad, which is this color right here. This Rapala DT8 citrus shad. It's beat up a little bit. I've caught some bass on it. I will also go with the old school color, which is blackback, chartreuse. But any of your shad colored patterns, I keep it pretty simple with that. I don't go to a lot of crazy colors. This is probably one of my favorite colors to throw citrus shad after the water temperature starts climbing back up into the 50s, like in springtime when it starts warming up. I will throw a citrus shad quite a bit. So really, citrus shad, this color pattern, and then some type of brown crawdad. You can keep it simple with those two types of colors. Now, if you're fishing a lake that's really clear, and here in Kentucky, the water gets clear in the winter when they draw the lake levels down. But more times than not, a lot of river systems, so they're not super clear. But if you're fishing in some clear water, you want to go toward color patterns that are like translucent or really natural colors with just some subtle things in there. But you don't want to use really bright chartreuse patterns if you fish in a clear lake. But like this citrus shad, I think you could still probably get away with that, maybe in that clear water. But I don't fish a lot of clear water, so I would say if you are doing that and it's really clear, you probably want to get into something that's more translucent or more natural than some of these brighter colors. So the color pattern, I don't think has to be super complicated. You can get away with just picking out a few reds, crawdad patterns in the winter, and then your shad color, like that citrus shad, blackback, chartreuse. That's a good color pattern. Also, just like I think there's like a disco shad that's out there. That's a good color. And then some of your translucent and natural colors for your clear lakes. But the crankbait, the big thing about it is more so than what color you're throwing is throwing it where it makes sense. A crankbait is not something that I throw in open water and let's say 30 feet of water and it only dives to 8 feet. I'm not throwing it in that depth zone. I am throwing it in the depth zone to where the crankbait, whenever it's thrown out there. So this DT8, I want it to be in 6 to 8 feet of water. Whenever that thing dives down, I want it deflecting off of everything. I want it deflecting off of rock, wood. If it's, sandy or gravelly bottom, I just want it digging and bouncing off of as many pieces of structure or items that are at the bottom. And so if depending on what depth zone it says it dives to, I don't want to go much deeper than what its max is. So this DT8, maybe I'll fish it in 9 to 10 feet of water because I know there's some things that are down there that it can still hit. But I don't want to go much deeper than what it's designed to dive to. And so, whenever I'm throwing a crankbait, I'm going to throw it in the depth zone that its max depth zone, whatever that is, and then maybe a foot or two shallower than that. I don't want to throw this, I wouldn't throw this DT8 in 3 or 4 feet of water, because then it's just going to dig and have a lot of action that it's not designed to have. So I'm really going to get in the depth zone that I know this can dive to, and then maybe a foot or two shallower than that. But that's something that maybe you may not know with a crankbait. You want this to deflect and hit off as much structure as it possibly can, because this is going to create a reaction strike. That's what you're looking for. You are trying to tick those bass off wherever they are, and when this hits off of something, then darts right, or darts left, or it hits and then springs up, or hits and goes down. Whatever action it is it's going to create that irritation with that bass. They see that, and then they either get excited or they get angry or whatever it is, and then they come and they grab a hold of it. So you're trying to create just some unpredictable movement, and that's why you want this crankbait hitting and deflecting off as much structure and as many things that it possibly can. So when I'm fishing a crankbait, that's what I'm doing. And specifically, this DT8 stays tied on year round. So I'm fishing 6 to 8 feet of water pretty much year round, regardless of the season. And a lot of times I start with that. I start with that crankbait. And, there are some times like right now where maybe it's not going to generate as many bites as it will in the spring and, late spring or early fall, but it still will get bites even in the dead of winter. So what do I have it set up on? Well, I have a Bass Pro Shops cranking stick, and I really like this cranking stick. It's not super expensive, but it's lightweight. It's got the power and the setup that I like out of it. It's a 7 foot medium rod. So I don't want a medium heavy rod with these medium diving crankbaits, or these shallow running crankbaits, if I even throw something a little smaller than this. But for these medium diving crankbaits like this DT8, I want something that is not going to be overpowering, but still have enough backbone that when I start reeling that fish in, it's going to be able to handle it. I don't want it to be too light either. So this 7 foot medium cranking stick is perfect for these medium diving crankbaits. So for the reel, I want something that's either going to be in the upper 5s or the 6s. This is a 6:8 to 1 gear ratio, which I think is perfect for this DT8, at least for me. I don't use high-speed reels, and I know there's people out there that do, and they slow it down if they need to slow it down. But this 6:8 to 1 keeps me from going way too fast. Because sometimes when you're out there fishing, you can get excited and you can be reeling that thing really, really fast. And I just don't like to burn my crankbaits in a lot of situations, especially these medium diving crankbaits. I want to keep it in the strike zone as long as possible. So I think something in the upper 5s, something in the 6s. I personally stay away from anything, in the 7s and above when it comes to my crankbaits. I just want something that's going to stay in that strike zone a little bit longer, and something I don't have to think about slowing down. When it comes to the line, I use 10-pound fluorocarbon. I don't want to go any heavier than that with this medium diving crankbait, and I also don't want to go with anything lighter. The 10-pound fluorocarbon just tends to work for me. You could probably bump it up to like a 12-pound fluorocarbon, but the 10-pound is light enough for me to cast this thing out a pretty good distance, because on the crankbait, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to launch that thing out there, get it out there pretty far. That way it can get down to the depth zone and stay down in that depth zone for as long as possible. So the 10-pound fluorocarbon is light enough to where I can make really long casts with it, get it out there, get it down in the depth zone, and let it stay down there for a good ways back to the kayak that I'm fishing out of. So talked about that, talked about the rod a little bit, talked about the reel, the speed there, talked about the line, and we've talked about colors a little bit. Also talked about fishing this a little bit, making sure that you're fishing it in the depth zone that it is made to fish. So another thing is where to fish. Where do you fish this? A lot of times I like to get parallel with banks. So riprap, bluff walls, even flats. I want to get parallel with the bank that I'm fishing, and I want to make sure that it's got the depth of water that I'm fishing. So I'll get my kayak lined up. I'll look at, my fish finder and see what the depth is, and I'll be parallel, and I'll just throw it parallel down the bank, and I'll just reel it in, just casting it out, steady retrieve, reeling it in. You can also do some stop and go retrieves with that, mix it up a little bit. But when I'm fishing this, I do like to fish it parallel with banks. It's probably the most optimal place to fish this. I also like to fish it off of points. So whenever I come to a point, I'll fish both sides of the point. I'll fish the middle of the point, and then I'll go down each side. I'll also get in some ditches, the back of ditches or the sides of some ditches, to where it's in the depth zone, and I'll fish it in that area. I will say, if I come across a place that has a lot of grass or a lot of heavy brushes, this crankbait is probably not what I'm going to throw in those areas. Now, if there's logs, light brush piles, not that much grass, more rock, sand or muddy areas, like, just as long as there's not heavy cover with thick brush, thick grass, and a lot of places that I'm fishing here in the region that I fish, we don't have a lot of that. But I would steer clear of it in those regards. So rock, logs, light brush piles, points. You can fish this just about anywhere, and the more you fish it, the better you get at getting it out of some sticky situations. For instance, the more you fish it, the more you're going to learn what a bite feels like versus, you just got hung up on something. And what you got to understand about these crankbaits is, if it's not a bite, if I'm fishing it and I feel like I'm hung up on something, instead of setting the hook into it, really hard, just, give it some slack line. Don't try to set the hook. And a lot of times these crankbaits, they are buoyant. So what they're made to do is, when they hit something, they're made to hit, and then they stop, and they just kind of float up. And so you can get your crankbait back, because these are like $10 a piece, so they're not cheap. So the more you fish it, the more you'll find the difference between a bite and something that is, you're just kind of hung up. And you can get this out of a lot of situations. Just because it has treble hooks on it doesn't mean that it gets hung up and everything. That's what the bill is for. That's why it's buoyant. So you just got to get out and fish it. And I've fished it so much to where I have the ability to fish it in just about anything that I want to fish it in, but I want it making solid contact, as much contact as possible. in the depth zone that it's designed to be fished. And so I just want it to hit and deflect off as many things as it possibly can. And this thing is also a fish catching machine. A crankbait is without a doubt the number one lure that I have caught the most bass on. Now it's not the one that I've caught the biggest bass on, even though it does catch big bass. It's also going to catch bass that are just as big as this crankbait because they'll swim up next to it and the treble hook sometimes will go into it. But this thing right here is a workhorse. I can take this out if I just took one lure out. I could take this thing out year round, fish it all day long, and I feel confident that I'll at least get, a couple of bites. But it shines a lot of times, in the springtime, even in the summer, which in the summer I go more toward the deep diving crankbaits, which we're not talking about, but we're talking about the medium diving crankbait for year round. I love throwing a crankbait. If you're not throwing a crankbait, I highly encourage that you learn to throw this, start throwing it. It is one of those lures that catches bass year round, and it's my go-to search bait. It's once again the workhorse of all the lures that I have, and it's something I have a lot of confidence in. Okay. Also, let's talk about, before I forget, let's talk about drag setup, because this is a power fishing technique, but at the same time, you have to have a little bit of finesse with it. With those treble hooks and with this light line, you do not want your drag to be tight, okay? You want your drag to be fairly loose. So I want to set my drag to where when I pull on it, it's fairly effortless for me to be able to pull that line out, okay? Because when that bass comes up and grabs that lure, it's going to go slack. And when you set the hook, you're not setting the hook like a Texas rig or a jig. You're not setting it really violently. With this, you just want to sweep from side to side and just let those treble hooks dig in. It's not, doesn't have to be a big pool, okay? And what I typically like to do, and I've taught myself this because I've fished it for a while, is, I just kind of like 1001. At least give it a second before I set the hook. I want it to take it a little bit. I don't want to jerk those hooks out of its mouth. And what you want to do is have a little give. So when they take that lure, you want your drag, and I can even go a little looser there. I want that drag to give, and I want that bass to kind of take off with it a little bit. And then I'm usually waiting about a second or two, and then I just kind of almost gently, not real hard, I just lean into it. Just lean into it with my rod and let those hooks sink in. And then it's got the drag is going to allow that fish to run. And when that fish goes to make a run, especially some of the bigger ones, you want it to be able to run. You don't want it to jerk real hard and those treble hooks come out, because if you've ever spent any time fishing with a crankbait, you'll find a lot of times they're not always hooked as aggressively as a Texas rig or a jig. You have to sometimes finesse them into the boat, and having that drag loose really helps. So those are just things that I've learned over time. Obviously, I've learned through other either anglers or people that have kind of taught me along the way, and hopefully that may help some of you figure out in terms of what are some lures, what are some setups, what can I do to catch more bass. But with a crankbait, it is power fishing, but you're using lighter line. because you want to be able to cast it out pretty good. You also want it to get down and stay down in the depth zone. And then with those treble hooks and the way that it's designed, you really want that drag to be set pretty loose to where that fish can run with it. Because if you're losing bass on a crankbait, a lot of times it probably has something to do with your drag being way too tight, and you end up just jerking those hooks from the bass completely. So those are just some tips, some things that I do with the crankbait. But if you're not using a crankbait, I would highly suggest that you start using that. You start throwing it. I think you'll find that a crankbait is a simple but effective way to catch bass, and it's been a staple of my fishing for a long, long time, and I really enjoy crankbait fishing. So um, that's part two. Second lure that I use year round to catch bass, regardless of what time of year it is. So hope you enjoy, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. God bless each and every one of you, and be looking for part three in the near future, where I cover the third lure, the number one lure. We'll catch you next time.